Welcome to Cultural Catalyst, the podcast that shines a light on the creative visionaries working behind the scenes in arts and entertainment. I'm your host, Alison McNeil, CEO and founder of McNeil Creative Enterprises. With over 20 years of experience advocating for equity and sustainable growth in the arts and entertainment, I've seen firsthand the power of the behind-the-scenes creatives. Here on Cultural Catalyst, the creatives behind the curtain take center stage. Let's celebrate the people who make the magic happen. Let's dive in. Hey there. Before we dive into this episode, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the shifts in our arts and cultural landscape since these conversations were first recorded. We've seen the challenges to institutions, including the arts, but we also have seen the resilience of creatives and cultural organizations. If you believe in the power of the arts, now is the time to take action. Support the artists and arts organizations that inspire you. Donate, amplify their work, and stay engaged. Visit Americans for the Arts to stay updated on advocacy efforts happening on Capitol Hill and across the country. Americans for the Arts provides resources and opportunities to get involved at the local, state, and national levels. We'll link their website in the show notes and continue sharing updates on our MCE Instagram. As the legendary Carrie Mae Weems reminds us, art is the one place we all turn to for solace, and we need that now more than ever. Let's show up for the arts, for our communities, and for each other. Now, let's get into this episode. Okay, Lila Mayes is the program administrator for the Directors Guild of America's Assistant Director Training Program. She prepares aspiring filmmakers for careers in feature films, television, and commercials. With a background in artist relations for the Grammy Awards and Capitol Jazz Music Festivals, she brings a wealth of experience from the entertainment industry to her role in shaping the next generation of directors. Welcome to the show, Lila.
Thanks for having me, Alison.
I'm so glad to have you here. I am so excited about making sure that the stories of everyone behind the scenes get uplifted, because without you all, how will we get to the work that we see on the stage? I mean, clearly the artists make it come to life, but the combination of the two is important.
Absolutely. There's a lot of work that's being done behind the scenes, and it's crucial to the finished product.
How did you get involved in this creative career? Like, what was your journey?
It's such an interesting, non-linear journey. And I love to share my story because it is such a roller coaster. And when I am speaking to young people, I often tell them, listen, where you end up may not be what you envisioned. Right? Finding your passion and purpose alignment is not necessarily a linear journey. And I find that to be really, really exciting because I tried a bunch of different things. And then finally, my passion and purpose. Honestly, Alison, I wanted to be a chef and I was discouraged from that. And so I went the more traditional route and studied business administration. And then I was like, in hotel and restaurant management specifically. But I still did my little catering on the side and sort of explored that part of me. But I think that's where the creativity started, was in cooking.
I see. Did you have a famous dish or your signature dish?
My signature dish was pound cakes, like just baking and following in my grandmother's footsteps as a little girl. That's my on the baking side, but I can throw down and like on the cooking side too. But whatever I do, yes. I think it's important to say I don't think people consider that as creative necessarily, but it totally is.
Right.
Art. And so that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a chef. That didn't work out. So I studied a bunch of other things, and really I fell into marketing at a power management company. Not very sexy, right? But it was super important stuff, like, power management. And I landed in the marketing department. I was mentored by an amazing guy. Shout out to Graham Robertson for mentoring me. He saw something in me and he really, really taught me marketing communication. And so under that was press releases, trade shows, those kinds of things. And so that's where I got the bug for large scale event. Was it really by building out we had a humongous booth. Building out our booth for trade shows is where I was like, oh, kind of liked it, and being on the floor and sharing information about products with people. And so when I left there, I maybe after a few years landed at the Recording Academy, right? And so talk large scale events. But it was such a hybrid for me because I worked in human resources. You were responsible for, of course, employee relations, benefits, that kind of thing, but also all of the other staff related events and that kind of thing. So that's where I really got to really sort of stretch my wings in some creative events and stuff, but to keep morale up in between the awards and stuff like that. So after about 10 years with them, I started looking for some other opportunities, and that landed me at the DGA's Assistant Director Training Program.
Can you tell us a little bit about the program? Why did you go there?
I was really taking a little bit of a sabbatical, right? I was like, I'm not sure what I want to do. I don't know that I really want to live in human resources anymore, but I want to sort of stretch in the area. What I was always doing in every sort of career path, like marketing, HR, wherever I was, I always had a bunch of young people, young women specifically, that I was mentoring. They're just drawn to me and I am drawn to them. So I was always mentoring young women when I was doing artist relations, all of that kind of stuff. And I was like, I feel like maybe life coaching or something might be what I should do. An opportunity came up and I actually shied away from it a little bit, Allison. I was like, I don't know that I want to do that. I don't know that I want to be in the guild or work for the guild or be in entertainment that way. And it was a nerve-wracking experience. It was like a panel interview with like 12 people. And wow, two of those,
I can only imagine 12 people.
like crazy, right? But I left each interview feeling really, really confident. And like, I had never worked in TV and film or any outside of the Recording Academy, which was obviously a live telecast, but I had really done that kind of thing. And so the more I thought about it, I was like, well, maybe this will be an opportunity for me to work more with some young people because a lot of young people apply to the program. Let me see what this is about. And they found back, right? Yeah, we want you.
And isn't that a wonderful thing?
It is a wonderful thing. And so I'm going to say this, my North Star really is coaching and like pulling up young people. I just think that is my purpose. And so a part of my job as the administrator of this program is to coach them. We place them on TV and film sets. So the end game of this program is membership into the Directors Guild of America as a second assistant director. And a lot of people don't know what assistant directors do.
I was about to say, could you explain that?
So the AD, and this is so much what we were talking about, just sort of being the catalyst behind the scenes, like the person that's making a lot of the magic happen. That isn't necessarily the creative, but the really crucial part of what's happening on the set. So an AD really facilitating the creative process by keeping everyone on time, keeping everyone safe, on budget. They're the logistics manager. They're managing all the things behind the scenes so the director can get the shot they're trying to get. It doesn't need to be bothered with the hair and makeup, who has to get to the wardrobe trailer, who hasn't eaten yet, have they signed their paperwork. All of those things are managed by the assistant director so that the actor can get where they need to get it on time and safely, and the director can actually get the shot.
What sort of skills or traits are critical for success for a second AD?
So attention to detail, time management, and really navigating personalities, because the second is really the information hub. They have to talk to everybody. They have to talk to transportation. So usually they're in what we call base camp, where all the trailers are, where everybody's getting ready, crafty, all of those things is happening in base camp. And so then there's another AD that's actually up on set with the director. The assistant director that's in base camp has to communicate with the assistant director on set to make sure things are moving the way they need to move. So great communication skills, again, attention to detail, because everything is sort of mapped out. There's a call sheet for every day, right? And on that call sheet, that's what time the sun comes up, where the closest hospital is, the temperature, the weather for the day, like all the things. And then everybody's schedule. Number one comes in at this time. Number two comes in at this time. Background is supposed to come in at this time, like the call sheet has all of that stuff. So the AD has to manage all of that and support the director in getting their shots so they can stay on time according to that schedule.
That's a really important job.
Right.
Sounds like
Yeah.
collaboration is really important too, because they're talking to so many different people.
Yeah.
So have you been on the sets of any of the shows that you've been where your members or participants are?
Yeah. So actually, they just did I wish I could say which one it was.
Wait, exclusive?
I just did a set visit on the Kendrick Lamar
Kendrick Lamar, what?
situation. That's all I can.
Okay, a situation.
But I try to go and visit as many sets as possible. So actually, I was in Chicago recently. I had a trainee on Power Force out there. So did a set visit there. I've gone to some feature films. Like we had 2 trainees on King Richard at the same time. And so that was great. I was actually on set one day while Will was filming. Abbott Elementary has been really great to the program. They've had a trainee for the last several seasons. So I've done a few set visits over there. Unprisoned with Kerry Washington and Delroy just canceled, but they've been really good to the program. So I've done a few set visits over there. It's really good for me because I can observe what my trainee is doing, but also really even learn more about the job of an AD because I've never worked as an AD before.
How do you feel that you are an attractive candidate for a role that maybe you haven't filled before? Because there's a lot of that you can bring into it from the outside looking in, but some might say, shouldn't you have done this?
Shouldn't I have been an AD? So that's a really great question in that all of my background, human resources, managing people, artist relations, all of that really support my job as the administrator.
That's right.
Because what I do as the administrator is recruit and work with productions to place my participant. So although I haven't worked as an AD, I now really understand what the job is and what the skill sets are. And so even when I'm doing recruiting, really a lot of my recruiting is mostly information sharing because I feel like who knows what an AD is if it hasn't been broken down for you. I had never heard what an assistant director was. So a lot of my recruiting is really just educational.
One of the reasons why I asked that question is because there are, if you will, non-traditional paths to get to these roles. And sometimes young people or people in career changes are meant to believe that they had to have had 20 years or something in order to be attractive. But what I'm hearing you say is being thoughtful about how your varied experiences can support a program is ideal and still supportive. So thank you for explaining that.
I think that's really important because for our application process for this program, there's several different categories folks can apply under. They can be veterans, they can be graduate of film school, they can have work experience. There's several different categories. Folks don't have to have gone to college. They don't have to have gone to film school to be an attractive candidate for the assistant director training program. Listen, if you've worked at a restaurant and you know how to manage tables, manage clients, a skill set that's completely transferable.
The managing clients and personalities is a role that all creatives working behind the scenes are doing. And, it's interesting because it doesn't matter if you are an HR, assistant director, or working with money, like there's always going to be some time where you're either dealing with an artist manager. You kind of talked about this, but I want to ask more directly. So your training program is known for providing access to people who may have yet to have opportunities in the film and TV industry. How does the program ensure diversity and inclusion in its selection process? And what do you hope that your impact is in the industry?
Well, listen, I hope to have a huge impact. As a Black woman who is the administrator of this program, it is hugely important to me that we have the most inclusive classes that we can. And so when I took over as the administrator, I sort of just wanted to follow what the recruiting strategies had been to see how they worked. And so I've tweaked them quite a bit. So I do very targeted recruiting. And again, my recruiting is really information sharing. I go to DC for NBCU Week, Black Congressional Caucus Week. I do information session in different places like Atlanta with their film commission or Chicago with their film commission. I am very strategic about bringing in the most inclusive classes possible. Now, I will say that's my recruiting strategy. It is a blind application process.
Mm. Can you tell us what a blind application process means?
All of the information that we get is redacted. So here there's sort of three steps to our application process. So folks can go online, they apply, click the submit button, and everything goes into our portal. What me and my staff do is check all of those applications for formatting. And so they're very specific instructions that we have. We redact names, we redact any sort of marks on those application. And then the second part of the process is we have consultants who review those applications. They have some criteria they're rating against. People are clever. They tell their story. So the meat of our application is like 5 essay questions, but it is blind in that no identifying sort of remarks are in those applications. Diversity and inclusion is hugely important to me. In fact, I got a DEI leadership award when I was in DC when was that, in September?
Congratulations.
Well,
Last month, September.
but I am really,
You're putting in work.
I was going to say I'm trying to do the work, but I'm doing the work.
Claim
Uh,
it. That's right.
Yeah, I'm doing the work. And so I will say we just sort of closed one of the loops on our application process. And I was thrilled to see how inclusive this group of candidates was. And not just in terms of ethnicity, ages, like there was just this spectrum, beautiful, beautiful spectrum of people in this last part of the process. So
How many people do you accept into the program? Is it annual process or?
annual process, it is hugely competitive. Hundreds of folks. We take like 10 people a year.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, since 2020, it's just been Hollywood has been hit with a bunch of stuff, right? So there's pandemic, and then there were these two huge strikes last year where productions were shut down for months. So that has impacted our program participants. We've had folks in the program who haven't worked in a really, really long time on production sets because we do certainly support them supplementing their income in other areas since there's this downtime. And that's one of the things that I always stress when I'm doing an information session. Like, there are going to be periods of unemployment because stuff happens. They get canceled, pandemics, strikes. And, thankfully that stuff doesn't happen all the time. But it's the nature of the industry.
Well, it's better to kind of know versus go in blind. And so that you can think about, okay, if something happens, how will I be prepared? How
Exactly.
could I, be resourceful and thinking about what else I can do?
So this program is an interesting program. It's 400 days, which takes about 2.5 to 3 years to complete because they do rotations from one show to the next. Maybe 50 days on Abbott. Maybe they get a feature film that's like 75 days. We had a training on a show called The High Potential. 60 days over there. They're rotating from one show to the next because we want them to be able to work with as many AD teams as possible.
And so when they leave, the goal is for them to be hired by one of their rotations.
The goal is to have as many contacts at the end of their tenure of the program. So because it's gig work. Once you're out of the program, like this program is devoted.
Sounds like.
We source the work for them, but once they graduate, they have to source their own work.
Do you all teach them the strategy behind that, like how to prepare to navigate?
So one of the other things we do, in addition to them learning the job in real time by working with an AD team, we do like masterclasses, I call them, right? So work animals, visual effects, like this whole overview of all things episodic television and feature film. But one of the last master classes they have to take before they graduate is surviving in a freelance.
I love that. For years, I worked with different types of musicians. When I say different types, I mean different genres and professional development programs that work mostly about their craft, their art. But I was happy to join this program that was called YPCA, Young Professional Career Advancement. And it was all about what you're talking about, making sure that they know the business side and how do I choose an agent or a manager and where do I get my headshots, all that kind of stuff that they may not get access to in their training programs because it's about who you know, right? Like,
yeah, by the time they graduate, they should be able to make the call. If they learned the job and they showed up the way they should show up, they should be able to call folks they work with like, hey, I'm graduating. Can I work with you? And it happens all the time.
Oh my God. So, okay. It sounds like this job can be incredibly rewarding. Like, what part of the job would you say was something that you're most proud of? Something that you did in your work that you are most proud about?
I'm going to go back to this most recent pool of applicants. One of the things that I'm proudest of is women of a certain age confident enough to apply to the program and actually make it far enough into the process that they came to what we call our assessment center, because that's a significant step in our process. Yeah.
Wow.
Since I've been the administrator, the woman who was late 50s, maybe early 60s, who graduated from the program,
I love that.
the door is open.
Thank you for uplifting that because I mentioned earlier young students but also career changers. So we think, what are our options? What options are available to us? And oh, I'm 45. I gotta just take what I can get. But I'm hearing you say,
Listen, and knowledge is power. Some people don't even know these pathways are out here. It's just really being a bulldog, Allison, and like, I have information to share. Let me get on one of your platforms, like reaching out to people, like, just give me 30 minutes.
yes,
Share some information.
you know what? I'm thinking in real time because that's the whole point of this podcast, right? Like to elevate those roles that create opportunities for culture shifts, right?
Right.
So I'm hearing you say those applications, a diverse group of people, age, race, ethnicity, location, that is so critical, especially as we move forward in this world, because it's
Right.
just, there are no limits as long as believe in yourself. I'm going to have to ask you to come and talk to some groups that I know. So, how does someone find you if they want to learn more about your program? Like, how would they, if they're not at the HBCU week or at CVC, what would they do?
Go to my website. The website is trainingplan.org. Our application instructions live on the website all year. We are in flux with application dates and stuff, but there's a contact button on there. Folks can send a note. My staff is just 3 of us. We have a very small team. The emails that come in, if anyone has any questions, they're all, there's certain questions I can't answer, like specific questions about application stuff. But anybody can send us a note at the contact page and staff will make sure I get it.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. We spent some time talking about what you're doing now, but I also want to speak a little bit about how I met you on Capitol Jazz Fest. How did you get work?
Oh, I love that time. That was an amazing, and I'm so grateful because it did bring us to know each other. I was working at the Recording Academy. So leading up to the actual telecast of the Grammy Awards, there's a week of events. That was some of the funnest events that ever I had to support. And it was a lot of work. It would be like 20,000 steps a day, but it was amazing. And right. So one of the events that was always my favorite, was one of the first events of the week, was the producer engineers wing event. And I was supporting that event. And I don't know, maybe working in the green room or something. And I met a board member from the DC chapter. And who are you? And how do you do you work for the producers and engineers wing? Do you work in recording? And who are you? Right. And I was like, yeah, I work for the Recording Academy and I'm still doing what I'm doing. And he was like, we need to stay in touch because I do this other work. And it was Wayne Bruce, who at the time was he was like the MD for the Super Cruise.
Okay.
He was like, there's somebody that you need to meet. I feel like she could do a great job with artist relations. That's how that happened. So I got pulled to do artist relations stuff, which was being the liaison between the promoter and the artist and all the advance work, making me at their backline and their accommodations and all their information. And then on the ship, making sure they knew where they were going and type. You know what? Just like an AD.
Really? That's why I was like, I wonder if she'll mention it, see those connections. It's like
an assistant director. Advanced work is very much like an assistant director.
It's so true. And, the thing that's crazy when I talk to young people and they're like, but I don't have any experience doing this or that, and even career changers. And you're like, well, what experience do you have? And through that conversation, you see the connections. When the light bulb goes off for them, it's like, oh, so amazing. And it doesn't necessarily guarantee that there's going to be something that happens right then. Right. But it's like, begin the work.
I so agree because I feel like all of our, I've heard for years, we are the sum of our experiences. We like to say our experiences support where we are and what's coming. You can take each experience and it can support where you are and where you're going. And so all of my experiences really have public speaking, from having to do seminars and HR and recruiting and interviewing. All of those things support what I do now.
Nothing is by mistake. I am, as an entrepreneur, regularly faced with making decisions on what type of contracts we want to work on or bid for. And some we get, some we don't. And just remembering that wasn't for us. And it's fine, because something else will be. But remembering that something about that process taught us something. Yep. So spend your energy there. And your path is set, I believe. That's interesting. What kind of challenges, if anything, have you found yourself navigating when you're doing this work with creatives?
Here's one of my biggest challenges. I'm governed by a board of 24 people, 24 bosses. That's my biggest challenge. I love my board. And the way they're split is half DGA members, executives. So most of them are like UPMs, which is a unit production manager. They actually manage the assistant directors. So some of them are UPMs, some of them are assistant directors, some of them are DGA executives. And then on the other side, the other 12 of them are studio executives, labor relations, VPs of development. We're governed by both of them, but they have different perspectives. So my biggest challenge is being in the middle, having to do the job and get support from both sides. Now, they know how to work together. I'm not suggesting that they don't. I'm just saying reporting to 24 people is a thing. But it has stretched me in the best way possible in terms of diplomacy and communication, that kind of thing. So I won't call it a challenge. I will say it's been a stretch.
A stretch, right. Opportunity.
Yeah.
It serves its purpose.
The other thing that I've had to be very diligent about is self-care. So during COVID, during the strikes, one of the things that I do, I keep saying I coach them, and I coach them to perform their best when they're on these assignments, right? But I also have become this huge support. Like, I do one-on-ones with them every other week. So when there's no work, I'm really just supporting and coaching, like, to keep them engaged, and it's going to get better, and let's trust the process. And so for me, it's really important that I manage my own self-care, because I pour out quite a bit. So we currently have 29 people in the program. So I have to be really, really diligent about my self-care, getting my rest, staying hydrated, all the things. That's probably the biggest challenge. The biggest stretch is working for a whole bunch of people. But the biggest challenge is taking care of myself while I'm supporting other people.
Well, I am so glad you mentioned that, right? Because when you're supporting others, whether it's whoever it is, but in this case, creatives who are preparing themselves to go on stage or film, TV, it's very easy to just get caught up in whatever they need and really pour back into yourself. Lila, I'm excited about all that we talked about today, for people to hear it, for other people that need to or are interested in doing this work to learn about it. Where do we stay in contact with you? Like, if we wanted to know more about what you're doing, where you are. We got the training program website. What about you?
Find me on LinkedIn. Probably the easiest. Like, my IG stuff is kind of private, but I show my stuff on LinkedIn. I just finished a really fun and important passion project for me in politics.
Something you can talk about, or?
I was an associate producer for Musicians for Kamala, actually.
Tell me more.
Well, there were all these affinity groups. Like, when we first heard that Joe Biden, God bless his heart, was going to step down, I had certainly that morning, I was like, what's happening? And then by the end of that day, there was the call. There was Black Women for Kamala call, right?
Yep, I was on it.
I was on it too. And so they'd been all these affinity group calls, right? So some folks got together and said, let's do something with musicians. I got pinged by someone who I did those trade shows with at that power management company.
Oh.
Certainly can't imagine who might come back and say, I've been watching you and I need you to be a part of this. And so that's what happened. They pulled me in and it was an amazing, amazing experience. That was one of the last things I posted on my LinkedIn. But yeah, I try to keep updating the things that I'm doing like outside of my work.
Well, Lila, this has been a joy to speak with you, to learn more about what you're doing day to day now, and just get excited about inclusion and your role in that process for what's happening on these sets and stages. That is the work, right?
Thank you. And let me give you your flowers because you're doing the work. Like to have a platform for folks to be able to share what they're doing and get this information out there is hugely important. So thank you.
You know what? Thank you for saying that, right? Our work primarily is a strategy consulting firm, and we've been saying we hope that after working with us, we've either created a roadmap, removed a roadblock, or highlighted a blind spot. So every project we take on, everything that we aim to do is in service to those objectives. I see this platform as a way to speak about roadmaps, accessing opportunities that you may not know about. But the other thing that's been really interesting with all my conversation is the non-linear path. So glad people are elevating that. Well, to be continued, because I'm definitely going to be reaching out. Thank you for listening and see you next time. Thank you for tuning in to Cultural Catalyst. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us for more inspiring stories from the world of arts and entertainment. You can find me on social media at MCE Arts and Alison T. McNeil on LinkedIn. Please leave a review and tune in to our next episode for more creatives behind the curtain. See you next time.